Picture this, it's 2020. We're fresh off the high of the MCU wrapping up the Infinity Saga in spectacular fashion, and what followed was some pretty mid superhero content, if I'm honest. However, alongside that and the still questionable DCEU, there was Amazon Prime's The Boys, a much fresher take on the genre. It was mature, intriguing, brutally violent, and packed with great characters, all layered with some political commentary. And then in 2021, another superhero show arrived on Amazon Prime, a show animated like something you'd see on Cartoon Network, presenting itself like any other typical superhero story. But in just the first episode, everything changed, delivering one of the most shocking moments I've ever seen in a pilot. And soon enough, kicking us off with
Think, Mark! Where is Omni-Man?
Are you sure?
Cecil!
Are you sure?
I need you, Cecil!
Are you sure?
this is the Shattering of the Superhero Spectacle. Just as a quick aside, this video was edited and recorded before the season 4 finale. Also, I have not read the comics. I do not know what happens later, and I've only seen glimpses of panels with no context. And seeing those was a long time ago. I will be discussing the show purely as a fan of television. With that, let's get to season 1. You know, I really wanted to title this video why season 1 of Invincible is still the best, but season 4 right now is
He flips it downfield and the
Despite that, I still can't express to you the special kind of giddy feeling I felt after watching that very first episode. Like many others, I had that same feeling of, oh look, it's another classic superhero show, emulating a lot of the classic heroes we know from DC Comics and Marvel. And I'm sitting there thinking,
What a peaceful, dull evening. Then, boom!
I was immediately hooked, and the season just kept getting better, except for that one episode with notoriously horrible animation and the awful writing surrounding this character, but everything else was so good that it didn't detract enough. Just when I thought it couldn't get better, the show introduced my drug for any sort of television show: morally grey characters. Cecil Stedman, the Amanda Waller / Nick Fury of the show, has so much aura, and his dialogue is some of the best in the show. I also really loved Robot in season 1. His side plot of working with the Mauler twins to get a new body to transfer his consciousness to, only for him to actually apologize to his clone, yet another amazing subversion. A truly honorable character, somewhat. And there was another thing that completely hooked me: the gore. Yeah, the show is violent, but it's not just there for shock value. What Invincible really does is strip away the illusion behind the typical superhero story, the one where the good guys save everyone and stop the bad guy. In Mark's very first outing, he's forced to confront what a real alien invasion would actually look like. There would be bloodshed, there would be casualties, and there would absolutely be trauma. We experience that horror right alongside him as he slowly realizes that being a hero isn't just flying around and pulling off cool tricks. Things are gonna get rough. And that reminds me, boy does Mark get fucked in this show. Keeping in line with grounding the superhero fantasy, we're used to superheroes and our main character eventually catching the dub in one way or another, especially during what seems like the jobber encounters. But he loses pretty much all the time this season. I think he gets like 1 or 2 dubs, and at first I found it difficult to adapt to that. Man, that Battle Beast shit was insane. I heard someone make the comparison that Machine Head calling him in is like Kingpin calling in Thanos. On top of that, the world building is incredibly well done, and the lingering mystery surrounding why Nolan did what he did festers with you over the entire season. I'm honestly glad I had never heard of the comic before watching the show, because the story really wants you to sit with that uncertainty and keep wondering what's actually going on, something comic readers probably didn't experience in quite the same way. We also get some great characterization from Mark's mother, Debbie, who I've heard didn't receive nearly as much development in the comics. Let me know if I'm wrong here down below, and while you're there, leave a like and subscribe. I make video essays like this almost every week, and I mostly focus on analyzing characters. If you guys want me to do that for the world of Invincible, then subscribe so you don't miss out. Oh, that reminds me, Alan is such a fun character. At first, I thought I'd be turned off by Seth Rogen voicing him, but he does an insanely good job at giving us such a sincere personality. He's perfect as him. Season 1 also brought us some of the most memorable moments of the entire show, even to this day. From Omni-Man's assault on the Flaxons, to the 2 I already mentioned, to Cecil's confrontation with Nolan after finding out what he did. Holy shit, Cecil is so f***ing cool. This scene might be my favorite scene of the whole show. Up until this point, we've rarely ever seen Cecil get personal, and this exchange really nails that. And of course, the final episode. The eventual revelation that Omni-Man isn't a kryptonite like Superman, but pretty much Frieza. The set pieces, the brutality, and the emotional moments to come from that final encounter were so gut-wrenching.
What will you have after 500 years?
You, Dad. I still have you.
Perfection. So overall, season 1 was a fantastic start to the series, and what it was setting up was intriguing enough to keep me waiting without reading ahead. Which brings us to season 2, 3 years later. Yep, already fans were a bit pissed at this long of a wait, and soon controversy sparked up on how messy some of the scenes of season 2 looked. I was in the camp where I didn't care all that much. I know these animators are getting fucking walloped with insane deadlines, but then again, this is Amazon. As much as I love hearing some A-list actors voice some of the characters, focus your budget on the animators for goodness sake. It's funny though, even while writing the script, I actually had trouble remembering what occurred in season 2. I only remember the final episode, but the rest, completely forgot. At first, I kept telling myself that the rest just wasn't that memorable, but then I started remembering. This was when Mark randomly came across Nolan on a bug planet to find out he has another kid. That scene that paralleled Omni-Man and Debbie and how they were coping with everything was really well done and well shot. Definitely one of the highlights of the season. Oh, and there was that episode featuring Alan the Alien, which was also great. It gave him more development, and man, the scene of him getting jumped was so hard to watch. I knew he'd come back somehow, I just wasn't expecting him to be a Saiyan. The idea of Zenkai boosts is so overpowered, it's insane. The Thetis reveal I'm sure surprised no one, and he quickly became one of my favorite characters in the show, especially after his lore in season 4. Oh, there was also the encounter with the Lizard League where Rexplode becomes the absolute GOAT. I'm so happy the show decided to make him more likable instead of an alright douche. And then came Anissa. Out of the very few things I know about what happens in the comics, I unfortunately know what she does.
How do you know about that? Everybody knows about that.
Look, I think Mark is a solid main character, but he's starting to become really frustrating. And not just because he gets absolutely tossed. The whole point of the show is that he isn't physically invincible. His strength is supposed to be his willpower. But then again, he doesn't ever really die. But it's in season 3 especially where he really started getting on my nerves. I'll get to this later. The ending of the season was great though. Not just because Mark and Amber finally broke up, but because Mark finally stopped holding back. The parallels of this show continue to amaze me.
I absolutely love the moment when Mark finally gets the upper hand against Angstrom and the triumphant hero music kicks in. It feels like the classic superhero victory. Our hero's finally gonna win. But then the music suddenly cuts out as Mark's punches get more and more brutal.
I thought you were stronger.
Again, a perfect twist on the usual superhero moment.
Of course, Angstrom somehow survives though. Ironically, this guy is obsessed with going after the one version of Invincible who's actually a good person. Honestly, I'd like to think Debbie plays a huge role in that, which only further shows why she's such a strong character. Overall, while I still think season 2 is solid, I feel it's the weakest out of all of them. Oh, and having a mid-season break was not helpful at all. Thank God they stopped that shit. I felt that this season was mostly here for the major build-up to the main event in season 3 and also for the main event in season 4. A slow burner, but nonetheless great. Then came season 3, and like I mentioned earlier, Mark was really starting to piss me off. This season, he and Cecil clash over how to deal with criminals. Mark believes every villain should be locked up, but when Doc Seismic kidnaps nearly every hero, Cecil shows up and deploys a few villains to help out, including Darkwing and the Reaniman. Now, I understand why Mark reacts the way he does. Sinclair is completely unhinged, and Darkwing straight up murdered criminals. But honestly, I couldn't really buy the idea that this was some deep philosophical debate. Mark was bugging. Cecil is basically just a far more competent Amanda Waller. He's not just sending them to jail, he's actively trying to rehabilitate them. And speaking of Cecil, I loved his backstory. The moment I saw that scar, I knew there had to be some good lore behind it, and the show absolutely delivered. Thank God it wasn't like what happened to Nick Fury in the MCU. Diabolical. The fact that he intentionally kept that patch of a damaged skin as a reminder, not just of that moment, but of the naive, selfless agent he used to be, was such a great character detail. And when the show eventually ends, he's 100% getting a full character analysis from me. The Guardians Civil War plot was fine, but Duplicate and Immortal were so annoying, especially with some of the shit she's been doing throughout the show. The show does manage to do something interesting with that morality debate through Oliver, a conflict Mark seems to wrestle with almost every season. We also get glimpses into the personal lives of some villains, which pushes the show even further away from the typical action cartoon formula. We see this first with those jobber villains, and later with Powerplex.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Meanwhile, Nolan and Alan teaming up with Battle Beast to escape prison was everything I wanted to see. Now, I really thought Mark putting on the black suit was going to signal a huge turning point for his character, like the gloves were finally coming off, and he'd start crossing lines. But nope. Not this season. That mostly happens in season 4, but then again, he goes back to the normal suit pretty quickly. So, I don't know. Still a great design though. And hear me out, I'm really starting to get tired of the obligatory Titan episode. It's the same formula every damn time. Titan calls Invincible for help, things seem straightforward, and then plot twist.
Fuck off!
Swearing doesn't make you cool.
So up until this point, I'd say season 3 was just fine. But then the last 2 episodes happened, and dear God, where do I even start? The long-awaited Invincible War begins, something that was being built up from season 2. Now, it's no Time War from Ben 10. I'm kidding. I loved everything about it. A good way to illustrate how terrifying the Viltrumite Empire is without actually including them, and also showcasing the latent potential Mark has. Oh, and speaking of Ben 10, I can't be the only one who thinks that if Ben 10 existed in this universe, he'd clap everyone, right? Not just because he has Alien X or whatever, but just because of how competent he is as a hero, most of the time. Feel free to discuss below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Anyways, everyone and their mother saw Rex's sacrifice coming from a mile away, but I would be lying if I said it didn't hit. You'll definitely be missed. The conclusion to that saga was alright. Of course, Angstrom somehow survives again. And then came Conquest. One of the few things I had seen from the comics after watching season 1 was this panel. I had absolutely no context for it at the time, but holy shit, just look at how insanely cool it is. And when this guy showed up in the show, I was so excited to see that iconic shot being recreated in all of its glory.
What the hell is this?
As I said, I don't like to clown on the animation too hard, but that looked rough. I was totally expecting a cool pullback shot where the animation slowed down as they charged at each other. A bit of a small nitpick, but this battle definitely deserved a cooler intro shot than whatever that was. Let me know what you guys think down below. Anyways, the fight between Conquest and Invincible was brutal as all hell. Oliver gets tossed almost instantly, then Eve gets impaled. This show really does not hold back. And that headbutting sequence was visceral, especially after Mark's arms get completely shredded. Maybe this is what the black suit was foreshadowing all along. This was Mark finally getting a dub, and a huge one at that, considering Conquest is supposed to be one of the stronger Viltrumites, I believe. Oh, and speaking of Eve, she's overpowered as hell too. Near-death experience power boost, and suddenly she's back in the fight. You just love to see it. And this is also one of the rare moments where Cecil is just a straight dumbass. How does he seriously think that thing is gonna hold Conquest? And now we've arrived at season 4. At the time of me writing this script, the finale hasn't come out yet, but this season has been really solid regardless. To be fair though, anything that isn't the Omni-Man Alan plot is just okay. Robot hasn't been all that interesting since season 1. He and Monster Girl just aren't that compelling to me, but they're clearly building something up for him. I imagine he might get 1 or 2 episodes where he goes off the rails and starts seeing everything as black and white, leading to some Ultron shit. Wait, now I'm thinking, what if Monster Girl dies while they're trapped in that Flaxen world, causing Robot's slow decline? Seeing Mark finally snap made me go, fucking finally. I get it, he's still young, but it feels like he's been stuck in the same internal conflict every season. Oh, and would you look at that? So much for interrogation, Cecil. Mark scrapping with Conquest again was sick, but how is he so useless against all the other Viltrumites, man? See, remember how I said it was sort of refreshing to see our main character get defeated a lot? Well, that got old quickly. Enough's enough. He needs to be doing more, because otherwise I'm just gonna be thinking to myself,
Dude plays like a little bitch.
Omni-Man's long-awaited redemption arc also begins this season, and so far, no complaints at all from me. His and Debbie's reunion was very emotional, as it should have been, and that episode where he tries to bond with Oliver was also very good. Although it looks like he's regained some trust from his sons, getting back Debbie will take a while, but I expect it to happen. The Herm episode was also just okay, but I did enjoy the hell lore they introduced. Damien Darkblood apparently appears in the comics, but nothing like he does in the show, and he barely shows up there at all. He was also heavily inspired by Rorschach and Watchmen, especially with all the Herm stuff, which honestly made me like him even more. From what I've heard, this episode doesn't take place at all in the comics, and I actually like the thematic idea of framing Earth as heaven. It's a really interesting way to reinterpret what hell even means in this universe. And then we got the Viltrumite lore, which was even better than I had expected. The Scourge virus, Thetis being the great betrayer, holy aura farm, but of course, none of that compares to Thrag. I remember hearing his name thrown around even back when season 1 was airing, and I kept wondering if he was just gonna stand around doing nothing for a while, at least in this season. And well, he kind of did, only to pull a clever girl on everyone. When I heard the group was heading to the Viltrumite homeworld to try and ambush them, I immediately got Dark Apocalypse War flashbacks. But I can forgive Superman for making a dumb move. The writers had to nerf Batman for that, didn't they? But hearing Thetis say that, I was like, yep, they're all fucked. Surprisingly, even though the Viltrumites were waiting for them, they still managed to blow up Viltrum. And when I saw that shot, I immediately remembered seeing that panel a while back. So they can recreate this shot pretty well, but not that one? Anyways, I have to geek out about Thrag for a second. First, he just stands there while everyone else is fighting. Then he pulls this Ultra Instinct nonsense, then that impact frame, and then that insane wind up that knocks Nolan off balance. Let me repeat that. Nolan got knocked off balance while Thrag was winding up a punch. That's ridiculous. I was honestly sad to see Thetis go out the way he did. I was hoping we'd at least get a short fight between him and Thrag, but realistically, he probably would have lost anyway. He was such a great character though, RIP. After Viltrum's blown up, Thrag completely loses him. I love that moment where Mark asks Nolan how they're supposed to beat him, and he just gives him that look like they're completely screwed. I actually thought Omni-Man was dead there for a second, but when we got that long shot of the two drifting aimlessly in space, I knew he wouldn't be. Invincible then charges in, and just like everyone else, gets completely finished. I went back and looked at the comic panels of this fight later, and damn, they absolutely did justice to the Mark 1. Glorious. Now, I don't know exactly how the rest of the finale is going to play out, but hearing that the Viltrumites are heading to Earth, and the fact that they let Mark and Nolan live, makes me think Thrag has another plan. He clearly wants to continue the Viltrumite bloodline, which means he might invade Earth not to destroy it, but to breed. Or maybe we'll get some kind of negotiation instead. My guess is the Coalition arrives above Earth, and Thrag basically says, let us breed with humans. And once we've rebuilt our numbers, we'll leave this planet alone. Of course, that doesn't mean they stop conquering worlds, they just rebuild Viltrum somewhere else and continue the Empire. Or maybe he wants Earth itself to become the new Viltrum. If that happens though, Alan, now leading the Coalition, could threaten him with the Scourge virus. Again, I don't know exactly how things will play out, but those are my guesses. If the finale is incredible and I do get some things right, I might make a small note here and post about my thoughts. Alright, editing Omar here. Just watched the finale. I sort of called it, and I'm glad it was Mark only that made the decision. Finally, he's not such a bitch boy. I mean, I guess the finale was a bit slow, but I don't mind it being a bit of a wind down after all the chaos that just occurred. Anyways, let's get back to the video. you. Overall, Invincible is easily one of the best superhero shows on television right now. The voice acting, the visuals, especially during the big moments, and the characters are all exceptional. I remember how much hype comic readers had when season 1 came out. Comic book adaptations have been around forever, but at the time, I had never seen an animated series follow the original story this closely. Now, I'm not saying it's never been done. The Long Halloween, The Killing Joke, dog shit by the way, and The Dark Knight Returns are all examples of fairly faithful adaptations, but those are just individual stories and movies. I'm talking about a full show adapting a comics narrative. Let me know if there are any more, by the way. So I can only imagine comic readers were having an absolute field day watching most of this unfold in all of its glory. Though I'll be honest, if I had read the comics and they didn't recreate one of my favorite panels, I'd probably be a little salty too. As I said in the beginning, its visuals are very much like Ben 10 or Generator Rex. Colorful costumes, a young hero learning, but the deeper you go, the more the show dismantles those expectations. Heroes fail constantly, even to jobbers. Victories come at brutal costs, and the line between right and wrong is constantly blurred. Invincible understands the superhero genre completely, and then twists it just enough to reveal the harsh reality underneath the fantasy. I truly hope this show continues to evolve and give us more of that same feeling I had when Omni-Man killed the Guardians in the very first episode. I still firmly believe nothing will top that first season, mainly because of the emotional conflict and heartbreak between Mark and Nolan, which is some of the best drama I've seen in television. I hope more characters get that morally gray aspect to them and continue to subvert fan expectations for the better, because beneath the colorful costumes and heroic wonder, the show exists to break the illusion, proving that Invincible is the shattering of superhero spectacle. If you're new around here, please subscribe. As I said, I make video essays like this almost every week. Be sure to discuss in the comments below without spoiling the comics, please. I don't plan to read anything ahead or get spoiled in the show, and I imagine a lot of other people are in the same boat as me. If you want to support me further, please follow all my socials, join my Patreon, and consider grabbing my book The Shattered Absolution, heavily inspired by the shows I cover. And I want to thank you for watching.